The stars are watching, and so am I. I'm Lila, your storyteller for tonight. 안녕하세요, 라일라입니다. 오늘의 bedtime 스토리는 알람시계에 대한 역사입니다. 오래전 알람시계가 없던 시절 사람들은 아침을 어떻게 맞이했을까요? 창문을 스치는 아침 햇살, 멀리서 들려오는 닭 울음소리, 혹은 거리의 소음이 하루의 시작을 알렸습니다. 하지만 해 뜨기 전 중요한 약속이나 먼 여정, 혹은 이른 출근을 앞두고 있었다면 어떻게 해야 했을까요? 사람들은 자연의 신호 대신 더 정확하고 변함없는 무언가를 필요로 했습니다. 그리고 그렇게 인류는 완벽한 알람을 향한 긴 여정을 시작하게 되었죠. 오늘은 철학자 플라톤의 물시계에서부터 우리가 아침마다 일어나는 지금의 알람까지 시간을 깨우기 위한 놀라운 발명품들의 이야기를 함께 해보려고 합니다. 그럼 오늘도 편안한 마음으로 이야기를 들어주세요. 시작합니다. Long ago, before alarm clocks became part of daily life, waking up was an unpredictable affair. The morning sun creeping through windows, the distant cry of a rooster, or the sound of bustling streets were the signals that the day had begun. But what if you needed to wake before dawn? What if you had an important meeting, a long journey, or work waiting for you at the factory gates? People needed something more reliable than nature's whims. Something precise and unchanging. And so began humanity's long and quirky quest for the perfect wake-up call. History of alarm clocks cannot be started without the famous story of the great philosopher Plato. Plato was a man of discipline, known for his early morning lectures and meditative routines. His students, however, weren't always as punctual as he was, and even Plato himself feared oversleeping and missing the dawn gatherings at his academy. In a world without alarm clocks or ringing bells, waking up precisely at the crack of dawn was no small task. To solve this problem, Plato didn't rely on roosters or servants. Instead, he turned to one clever invention, the water clock. Water clocks were simple but effective devices. They consisted of a vessel filled with water that dripped slowly into a lower container. By controlling the flow of the water, the clock could measure time. But Plato wanted more than just a clock that told time. He wanted something that would alert him when it was time to wake up. So he modified the traditional water clock. When the water reached a certain level, it forced a pocket of air through a small pipe. This sudden release of air created a loud whistling sound, loud enough to wake even the grookiest philosopher. It's said that the noise was sharp and sudden, almost like a tea kettle boiling over. For Plato, it was the perfect way to stay punctual, and perhaps to gently remind his sleepy students that philosophy waits for no one. Plato's whistling water clock wasn't the only one of its kind. In ancient Greece, Rome, Egypt, and later in the Islamic world, water clocks became incredibly advanced. Some used gears and automata to strike bells or move figures when time ran out. However, Plato's version stands out because it was one of the earliest known alarm clocks in history. A clever blend of science, sound, and a desire to make the most of the day. Did you know Korea also had a water clock? And not just any water clock. Taegyeongru was a masterpiece of engineering and one of the most advanced timekeeping device of its era. While Plato's whistling water clock was designed to wake a philosopher at dawn, Korea's Taegyeongru served an entire kingdom, ensuring that time was kept with incomparable accuracy, day or night. The story of Taegyeongru takes us back to the 15th century during the reign of King Sejong, a monarch renowned not only for creating the Korean alphabet, Hangul, but also for his commitment to scientific innovation. At the heart of his ambition was the desire to create a more organized, prosperous society, one where farmers could manage their planting schedules, officials could regulate daily activities, and ceremonies could proceed with impeccable timing. But Korea's traditional sundials couldn't meet all these needs, especially during cloudy weather or at night. To solve this, King Sejong enlisted Chang Yongsil, a brilliant inventor from humble beginnings who rose to prominence due to his extraordinary talent. His task? Build an automatic water clock that would function without human intervention and provide consistent, audible signals throughout the day. Chang Yongsil's creation, Taegyeongru, was a marvel of precision and artistry. Water flowed through a series of basins, activating floats and levers that, in turn, set wooden figures into motion. At specific times, the figures would strike bells, gongs, and drums to make the hours. There was no need for anyone to reset or adjust it during the day. Everything worked seamlessly thanks to the intricate internal mechanisms. The sound of the bells and drums could be heard across the palace, ensuring that everyone, from the king to the guards, stayed synchronized. Much like Plato's water clock, the Taegyeongru wasn't just about telling time. It was about ensuring that life moved with purpose and order. King Sejong saw the clock as a reflection of the harmony and discipline that a well-governed society should embody. And beyond this practical use, the Taegyeongru was a symbol of Korea's scientific and cultural brilliance, showcasing the kingdom's ability to create innovations that rivaled and even surpassed those of other civilians. Just as Taegyeongru embodied the spirit of precision and purpose in 15th century Korea, another remarkable chapter in the history of timekeeping was unfolding centuries later in the quiet town of Concord, New Hampshire, USA, where a clockmaker named Levi Hutchins was driven by his own unwavering commitment to punctuality and self-control. In the year 1787, Levi was already awake before the first tint of dawn. Levi was a clockmaker by trade and a firm believer in routine. For him, waking up at exactly 4 a.m. every morning wasn't just a habit, it was a principle. He believed that rising before the rest of the world was the key to a productive and moral life. But there was one small problem. Mornings were unpredictable. Without any reliable way to wake up at the same exact time every day, Lavi sometimes overslept, and that frustrated him. Roosters were inconsistent, and the church bells didn't ring early enough. So Lavi did what any skilled inventor would do. He took matters into his own hands. Using his knowledge as a clockmaker, Lavi built something truly remarkable, a mechanical alarm clock. Inside a wooden case, he installed a system of gears and springs that moved in perfect synchronization. At exactly 4 a.m., the mechanism triggered a loud brass bell that rang until it was manually stopped. The ringing sound was sharp and insistent, impossible to sleep through. But there was one curious feature about Lavi's clock. It only rang at 4 a.m. There was no way to adjust it. In Lavi's mind, 4 a.m. was the only time worth waking up. Why would anyone want to set it for later? This wasn't an invention meant for the clouds. It was made purely for himself. Interestingly, Lavi never patented or mass-produced his clock. He never saw it as something to be sold or shared. It was a practical solution to his own problem, nothing more. His goal wasn't to change the world, just to make sure he got up at the crack of 4 a.m. every day. But while Lavi may not have sought fame, his invention is considered one of the earliest recorded examples of a personal alarm clock in the United States. And even though Lavi didn't commercialize his idea, his clock would inspire future inventors. By the early 19th century, alarm clocks had taken their first steps into existence, but they were far from perfect. While Lavi Hutchins' 4 a.m. clock was ingenious, it had one obvious limitation. It only rang at 4 a.m. No one, not even its inventor, could change the set time. For decades, this was the reality of early alarm clocks. They were static, single-purpose devices. But in 1847, a French inventor named Antoine Radier came along and changed everything. He invented something that seems simple to us today, but at the time, it was revolutionary. The first adjustable alarm clock. Radier's invention was a breakthrough in personal timekeeping. Unlike earlier clocks that range at a fixed time, his design allowed the users to choose their own wake-up time. Whether you wanted to raise at 5 a.m. for work or sleep in until 7 a.m. on a Sunday, Radier's clock gave you control over your morning routine. This simple innovation turned the alarm clock from a novelty or luxury into a practical tool for everyday life. It was no longer just for restrained clockmakers like Lavi Hutchins. It was for farmers, factory workers, and anyone who needed to wake up at a specific time. The Industrial Revolution was in full swing by the mid-19th century, and the world was becoming more punctual. Factory workers had shifts to start, trains had schedules to keep, and cities were bustling with activities at precise hours of the day. People no longer lived by the sun alone. They lived by the ticking hands of the clock. Before radio's invention, people relied on public clocks, church bells, or knocker-uppers to wake them up. But radio's adjustable alarm clock meant that people could now have their own personal timekeeper right on their nightstand. It gave individuals a sense of independence. No need to wait for the town bells to chime or a stick tapping on the window. Despite his success in creating the adjustable alarm clock, radio's name isn't widely known today. His invention may not have had the flash of a grand discovery, but it quietly revolutionized how people organized their lives. His design set the stage for the modern alarm clocks we use today. Radio's contribution was more than just a technical achievement. It represented a shift in how people interact with time. No longer did they need to wake at this preset hour chosen by someone else. Instead, they could choose the hour that best suited them. After radio's patent in 1847, adjustable alarm clocks became more common. Though they were still expensive and out of reach for the average household, it wasn't until the late 19th century when clockmakers like Seth Thomas in the US and Westclock in Scotland began mass-producing affordable wind-up alarm clocks that they truly became household staples. Before the mass production, personal alarm clocks were expensive and still rare. Most workers didn't have access to them. So how did people wake up for their early morning shifts? The answer came into two very different forms: factory sirens and the knocker-uppers. Factories ran like clockwork, and many had enormous steam whistles that blared at precise times during the day. The first whistle usually sounded at dawn or just before the first shift began, acting as the town's alarm clock. You could hear these whistles from miles away. The factory whistle was both dreaded and reassuring. It meant another long day of work was beginning. But it was also a familiar signal that kept the town running on time. However, not everyone lived close enough to hear it clearly, and some people were heavy sleepers who could even sleep through the noise. Enter the knocker-uppers, the human solution to the problem of early morning wake-ups. In towns across Britain and Ireland, knocker-uppers would roam the street in the early hours, armed with long sticks and pea shooters. They would tap on windows, sending precise knocks that were loud enough to wake their clients, but quiet enough not to disturb the neighbors. For a small weekly fee, you could hire a knocker-upper to make sure you were up for your 5 a.m. shift. Knocker-uppers became a fixture of industrial towns, but their job was not without its hardships. They woke long before anyone else, and often walked miles each morning in the cold, fog, or rain. It wasn't glamorous work, but it was essential, and for many workers, it was far more reliable than any early alarm clock. But as wind-up alarm clocks became more affordable in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, the need for knocker-uppers began to decline. By the 1920s and 1930s, the profession was disappearing, though a few local clients continued to hire knocker-uppers simply because they preferred a familiar knock to the sound of a mechanical bell. By the early 20th century, The world had entered a new age, an age powered by electricity. Lights replaced gas lamps, machines ran on electric motors, and factories operated day and night. Timekeeping had become more important than ever, and while wind-up alarm clocks were popular, they had their limitations. You had to remember to wind them up each night, and if you forgot, you would oversleep. Even worse, their gears could slow down or stop completely after a few hours, especially if they weren't wound properly. It was clear that something better was needed. Enter the electric alarm clock. The first electric alarm clocks began to appear in the early 1920s. Unlike wind-up clocks, which used springs and gears, these new clocks were powered by steady electric currents. This meant they didn't need to be wound and could keep time far more accurately. The electric motor inside would keep the hands moving smoothly, and the built-in alarm could be set with ease. In addition to being more convenient, electric alarm clocks offered another major improvement. They could ring louder and longer. The sound wasn't limited by mechanical parts. Instead, it was powered by an electric circuit that could create sustained ringing, buzzing, or chiming. For heavy sleepers, this was a game changer. As electricity became more common in homes across Europe and America, electric alarm clocks became more accessible. By the 1930s, companies like Westclock and General Electric were mass-producing affordable electric clocks that could sit on every nightstand. These clocks weren't just timekeepers. They became part of the modern household, their soft hum filling bedrooms across the country. However, electric alarm clocks had their own set of challenges. If the power went out during the night, the clock would stop, and so would your wake-up call. This became a common excuse for being late to work. The power went out and I overslept. As the popularity of electric clocks grew, companies began competing to make their models stand out. Some clocks had soft chiming alarms instead of harsh buzzers, while others had illuminated faces so you could see the time in the dark. One of the most popular features was the radio alarm clock, introduced in the 1940s. Instead of waking up to a shrill ring, people could wake up to music, news, broadcast, or their favorite radio programs. The electric radio alarm clocks became a household staple, especially in the post-World War II era, when radio was the most popular form of home entertainment. It was far a gentler way to start the day, and for many, it turned the morning wake-up into something a little less painful. The introduction of the electric alarm clock marked a significant shift in how people lived their daily lives. No longer did they need to wind their clocks, reset springs, or worry about missing a knock at the window. Electric clocks were accurate, reliable, and affordable. Though the electric alarm clock was a huge improvement over wind-up models, it also marked the end of a more personal era. Gone were the days of knocker-uppers, morning roosters, and town bell towers. Instead, time became something precise, mechanical, and some would say impersonal. But for all its flaws, the electric alarm clock changed lives. It offered freedom from constant winding, improved punctuality, And with the introduction of the radio features, even allowed people to start their day with music instead of noise. Today's digital alarms, smartphone alerts, and even sunrise simulators all owe their existence to the simple electric alarm clock. It was the first device that gave people a dependable wake-up call without manual intervention. While we come a long way from its steady hum and loud buzz, the electric alarm clocks remains a key chapter to the story of humanity's ongoing effort to master time and to get out of bed on time. By the late 20th century, alarm clocks had become an ordinary part of daily life. From buzzing bells to soothing radio stations, most people had a way to wake up at the right time. But for some, even the loudest alarm wasn't enough. The snooze button had become both a blessing and a curse, leading to an endless cycle of sleeping in for just 5 more minutes. Enter the world of challenge alarm clocks. Clever, quirky, and sometimes downright annoying devices designed to force even the deepest sleepers to get out of bed. These clocks didn't just ring and wait to be silenced. They made waking up an adventure. One of the most famous challenge clock is Clocky, a small wheeled robot invented by MIT graduate Gauri Nanda in 2005. When Clocky's alarm went off, it didn't just sit on the nightstand. It left up and rolled away on its wheels, beeping loudly. It dashed across the floor, forcing its owner to get up and chase it to turn it off. For people who hit snooze one too many times, Clocky was a hilarious or frustrating solution. Another notorious challenge alarm is the puzzle alarm clock. When it goes off, it releases several small puzzle pieces into the air. The alarm won't stop ringing until all the pieces are gathered and placed back into the clock. It's the ultimate wake-up challenge for people who need to engage their brains to wake up. For those who like mental challenges, there's a math alarm clock. When the alarm rings, the only way to silence it is to solve a math problem. The difficulty of the math equation can be adjusted, but if you're a fan of hitting snooze, be aware some versions won't let you skip solving the puzzle. Whether it's a simple addition problem or a complex equation, the idea is to force your brain into action, snapping you out of your groggy state. Challenge alarm clocks represent more than just clever inventions. They're proof that waking up can be a battle between our ambition and our love of sleep. While some people wake up with ease, others need a bit of chaos to start their day. These wild and creative clocks remind us that everyone has a different relationship with mornings. Though they may seem like gimmicks, challenge clocks have inspired many features in modern smartphone alarms and sleep apps. Today, you can set alarms that require you to take photos, solve puzzles, or even walk a set number of steps before they turn off. All of these inventions trace their roots back to those early quirky clocks designed to get even the most stubborn sleepers out of bed. By the 21st century, alarm clocks had come a long way from ticking gears and clanging bells. Timekeeping had become digital, portable, and personalized. The rise of smartphones, fitness trackers, and smartphone assistants revolutionized the way we wake up. Instead of harsh buzz or mechanical bell, many people began waking to custom sounds, from gentle melodies and bird songs to their favorite music playlists. Modern alarm clocks weren't just about waking up on time. They aimed to make the process as pleasant and restorative as possible. Waking up was no longer seen as a painful necessity, but as part of morning ritual that set the tone for the entire day. The smartphone became the ultimate all-in-one tool, replacing the traditional alarm clocks for millions of people. Suddenly, alarms could be customized with ease. Users could set multiple alarms, choose different sounds for different days, and even label their alarms with reminders like "go to the gym" or "don't forget your meeting." Instead of a bedside clock glowing in the dark, people now slept with their phones within arm's reach, waking to anything from a soft chime to their favorite song. But this new convenience came with the downside. Sleep experts began warning that sleeping next to a smartphone could disrupt sleep patterns due to the blue light from screens and the temptation to scroll late into the night. The next major jump in modern wake-up technology came with smart alarm apps and devices designed to track your sleep cycle and wake you at the perfect time. Instead of waking you in the middle of deep sleep, these alarms use sensors to monitor your movements and wake you during your lightest sleep pace, making you feel more refreshed. One of the most popular modern inventions is the sunrise alarm clock. Instead of using sound, these clocks use gradual lights to simulate a natural sunrise. Over the course of 20 to 30 minutes, the clock slowly brightens, filling the room with a warm glow that gently wakes the sleeper. These clocks are especially popular in places with long, dark winters where natural sunlight is limited during the early hours. With the rise of smart home devices like Alexa, Google Home, and Siri, wake-up routines became more interactive. Instead of pressing buttons or tapping screens, people could simply say, "Hey Siri, set an alarm for 7 a.m.
I set your alarm for 7 a.m.
Just like that. Smart assistants also allowed for more personalized wake-up routines, playing the news, updating the weather forecast, and turning on the coffee maker, all as part of a single morning command. As concerns about sleep health grew, companies began releasing wake-up devices designed to improve sleep hygiene. It's designed to help people wind down at night with calming soundscapes, dimming light before waking them with soft sounds and gradual light in the morning. These clocks are meant to help people avoid using their smartphones in bed, encouraging healthier sleep routines. Some modern alarms have no sound at all. Instead, they use vibrations, temperature changes, or even bed shakers to wake users. These silent alarms are especially helpful for people who are hard of hearing or who don't want to disrupt others. Some smart beds even come with built-in wake-up features like adjust mattress pressure or emit soft heat to nudge you awake. Modern alarm clocks have become more than just timekeepers. They're part of a morning experience designed to ease people from sleep into wakefulness. Whether it's a voice assistant reading the morning news, a wristband buzzing silently, or a gentle glow mimicking the sunrise. Today's wake-up calls are all about comfort and control. As technology continues to evolve, wake-up calls may become even more advanced. In the future, we might see AR alarms that adjust based on your sleep data, automatically shifting your wake-up time if you didn't get enough sleep. Or perhaps Smart home systems will integrate with health monitors to suggest the best sleep and wake routines based on your daily rhythms. Whatever future holds, one thing is clear. We've come a long way from the mechanical clanging bells of the past, and yet, despite all the inventions, the purpose remains the same: to gently, or sometimes loudly, remind us that the day has begun and it's time to rise and shine. So the next time your personalized wake-up tune softly plays or your sunrise clock fills your room with golden light, remember that you're part of a long tradition of humanity trying to master the art of waking up. From ancient water clocks and bell towers to smart alarms that whisper, "Good morning." And so, the story of alarm clock stretches from ancient Greece to modern-day smart homes, from Plato's whistling water clock to sunrise simulators that greet us with gentle light. Across time, people have tinkered, invented, and improvised to master that simple yet universal challenge: waking up. It's a reminder that time waits for no one, but it's also a comfort, proof that, even in our most ordinary moments, like rising with the morning, we're part of something much bigger. We are connected to centuries of dreamers and inventors, farmers and factory workers, knocker-uppers with long sticks, and clockmakers like Levi Hutchins with his unwavering 4 a.m. bell. And while our alarms may sound different now, perhaps a favorite song or the soft singing of imagined birds, the purpose remains the same: to welcome the new day and all the possibilities it holds. But right now, there's no need to worry about alarms or wake-up calls. The night is quiet, and your journey into sleep awaits. For now, it's time to rest, time to dream, until your own gentle reminder signals that it's time to rise again. I hope my voice and story was a soundscape of your gentle night, and tomorrow would be much lighter to wake up. Until then, good night.